Grandad's Prayers of the Earth by Douglas Wood and illustrated by P.J. Lynch. When I was little, my granddad was my best friend. Being with him always made the world seem just right. Grandad and I liked to go for walks in the woods together. We didn't walk very far, or very fast, or very straight. While we walked, I would ask him questions about things I wasn't sure of. "Why is it, Grandad?" I would ask. And "what if?" And "does it ever?" One day, I asked my granddad about prayers. For a long time, Grandad was quiet. He didn't say anything until we came to the tallest trees in the forest. And then he answered with a question. "Did you know, boy," that he whispered, "that trees pray?" I listened closely, but I couldn't hear them. "See how they reach for the sky," he said. "They reach and reach for clouds and sun and moon and stars. And what else is reaching for heaven but a prayer?" I thought about the trees and kept listening for them. And while I thought, I sat down on an old mossy rock. "Rocks pray too," said Grandad. "Pebbles and boulders and old weathered hills. They are still and silent, and those are two important ways to pray." I thought about the rocks. I picked up a pebble and stuck it in my pocket. We walked a little farther and came to a small stream. The water splashed and sparkled, and tiny fish hovered in the shadows. "Do streams pray too, Grandad?" I asked. "Streams pray too," he answered. "And lakes and rivers and waters of all kinds. Sometimes they pray silently like the rocks. They lie still and calm, reflecting clouds or birds or sunsets or the first evening star. Sometimes they pray with movement, flowing across the face of the earth, giving themselves to the ocean, giving themselves to the sky, and beginning their journey all over again. Sometimes waters pray with laughter, chuckling to their friends, the rocks, and sometimes they pray by dancing, leaping into the air and falling back again." "These are all ways to pray," said Grandad, "but there are more. The tall grass prays as it waves its arms beneath the sky, and flowers pray as they breathe their sweetness into the air. The wind prays as it whispers and moans and sighs. It is saying a prayer and singing a hymn at the same time. A bird prays when it sings the first song of the morning, and it prays in that silent moment just before it sings. And the robin's last song at sundown is an evening prayer. All the beings of the world pray," said my granddad, "as they slip through the forest or sparkle in the water, as they climb mountainsides or soar into the clouds or burrow into the earth. Each living thing gives its life to the beauty of all life, and that gift is its prayer." Then, when we were quiet, my granddad and I, he was watching something far away, and I was thinking about all he had said about rocks and trees and grass and birds and flowers. Finally, I asked him to tell me about the prayers of people. Grandad smiled and ruffled my hair. People pray some of the most wonderful prayers of all, he said. Bending down to smell a flower can be a prayer, said my granddad. Quietly watching the sunrise, feeling the slow turning of the earth, and saying hello to a new day is one of the oldest prayers. Standing in a snowy woods on a winter day and watching your breath become part of the breath of the world is a way to pray. Making music or painting a picture can be a prayer. Holding hands around the table with family and friends, remembering all that holds us together and giving thanks is one of the greatest prayers. Sometimes, said Grandad, people pray when they are sad or sick or lonely or have a problem too big to carry by themselves. They may say words they have learned from their fathers or mothers or granddads or great-grandmothers, but often they must find their own words. The important thing to remember is that the words will always be right if they are real and true and come from the heart. We had walked far enough, and Grandad said it was time to go back. But I had one last question. Are our prayers answered, Grandad? I asked. Grandad smiled. Most prayers are not really questions, he said, and if we listen very closely, a prayer is often its own answer. Like the trees and winds and waters, we pray because we are here, not to change the world, but to change ourselves. Because it is when we change ourselves that the world is changed. My granddad and I went for many walks after that one, and I often listened for the prayers of the earth, but was never sure I heard them. Then one day, my granddad was gone, and no matter how hard I prayed, he didn't come back. He couldn't come back. I prayed and prayed and prayed until I couldn't pray anymore. And so I didn't for a long time. And the world seemed dark and lonely without my granddad in it. Until one day I went for a walk. I found a big rock under some tall trees and sat down on it. Overhead the branches swayed and a breeze whispered in the leaves. I heard a stream flowing nearby and a robin singing from a honeysuckle bush. And I heard something else too, something in the sounds of breezes and birds and water. I heard prayers. The earth was praying, just like my granddad said. So I joined in. Thank you, I prayed, for tall trees and sweet flowers, for still rocks and singing birds, and especially for my granddad. And as I prayed, something changed, and my granddad seemed somehow near. And for the first time in a long time, the world seemed just right.